I can think of about 4 things that I really wish you would take back right now.
Like what?
The cookies in the oven.
Well, that's a joke.
But it's not, Nick. My wife is Jewish. My son is Jewish. No, Nick.
There we go.
Nick, I promise you.
Look at
Don't get
Andrew.
mad.
I'm not mad.
Okay,
It's
I know. But you got to understand how incredibly, whether it's a joke or not, it's a lived experience passed down from generation to generation. Whether or not, and by the way, not just from the Holocaust, not just from 1939 on, 2,000 years of history. Okay. Forget about Israeli politics and Netanyahu, because I think we agree about Bibi Netanyahu. I'm positive we do. And I've listened to you talk about it. But you got to understand. Look at me, man.
I see.
It hurts. It hurts.
Does it?
Nick, I promise you it does. When you compare my wife's family to cookies going to an oven, it hurts, and you've got to understand that. And by the way, I'm looking at you,
I don't
and I
think that
believe
was-
that you do know that.
That's not the point of the metaphor. It was about the fucking that was not the point of the metaphor that Nick was even making.
That's
but
where you
Nick-
lose me. That's where you lose me.
Okay, Nick.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm telling you.
Well, listen, are we here to talk, or are you here to lecture me and
Okay,
preach
no,
to
you're
me?
right. Let me listen.
Okay.
You're right.
So
You're right.
this is a
Okay.
thing, because, and I think this is a disconnect. I think that the left, and even people on the right, they're losing the young people. Why do people love
What was
me?
he talking about cookies for? It was a metaphor that he used for explaining why he thought that 6 million Jews didn't die in the Holocaust. And he said, basically, as a metaphor, you couldn't put that many cookies in an oven. Like, that's basically what it was. I'm abbreviating this. I don't necessarily agree. It's not necessarily. I don't agree with this. I think that in my opinion, I don't think that the amount of people that were killed in the Holocaust is like a big thing to me. Like, I'm not like trying to say that it was low, but I'm saying that like it would be bad no matter what. But a lot of people try to downplay it, and I think that the reason why is because they want to. The implication is that fewer people died in the Holocaust, and I'm trying to think of a good way to say this because it can get clipped out of context really easily, right? Is that basically what a lot of people think is that the number in the Holocaust was really high, and they use this as like a moral justification that you can't criticize Jewish people. That's basically what it is. I think that's stupid, but that's the way a lot of people see this. And that's what Nick was saying. It's not about them being cookies. It's about the metaphor of how many cookies can you bake. That's what it was about.
Not in spite of, but because of the outrageous things that I say. Not in spite of, but because I say offensive things. Because I, let's say, drop the N-word on a video or something. It's because people are sick of the preachiness, the lecturing.
Okay, I'll listen.
They
to what
really
you're
are.
saying. But Nick, I disagree. I think that you're appealing to the lowest common denominator of thought. If you're hating on the people that they think are the reason for their suffering, then you must be on their side. I don't think that you believe that about the Holocaust. I think you think the Holocaust did happen. But forget about whether or not you think that it is used politically in a way that is obtuse and wrong. But I think that you do believe that. And I think that you have to. Like, what's your cultural heritage?
I'm Italian, Mexican, and Irish.
Mexican. When did they come in Italian? When did the Mexicans come? When did the Irish come?
Mexicans came.
That's why Hunter's out of touch. I think that really, I think it's very fair to criticize people, like especially Israel, for using the Holocaust as a moral trump card over accountability for things they do in Lebanon or Palestine, or as a trump card against the First Amendment in the United States of America. I don't think that just because you suffered a horrible thing happening to you in history means that you have the moral authority to tell everybody else what they can and can't say forever. I don't think that's fair. By the way, the Holocaust is not the only bad thing that's happened in history. There's like dozens of really bad things like that have happened in history.
Turn of the last century. Italians came in the 1860s. Irish came in the early 1900s.
Okay. So maybe you wouldn't care about something that is like grossly offensive just on the face of it and think that, oh, why can't people just believe that that's funny? But you got to understand, it's from the perspective of somebody that has the trauma, and I think that there is such a thing as generational trauma, and those stories are passed down generation to generation. When you say something like that, it completely shut off. They can't hear another thing that you're saying. saying about this cultural disconnect, about losing communities, about the feeling of being left out or left.
In my opinion, I hate to say this, but I actually understand what Hunter's saying. And I think that the fixation around how many people died in the Holocaust is a distraction. I think that ultimately it doesn't really matter, and there's a lot bigger fish to fry that are mutual enemies, and there's no reason to draw a divide with that immediately. Like, I understand that people can have their opinions, but I think that every opinion and every value that people have has to work towards a goal. And to the extent that your opinions and values are not being used to achieve a goal, then they don't really have a lot of value. Sometimes they have a net negative value. Even if you think they're true, it doesn't mean you have to use it's like, you can have a bunch of tools in your, in your workshop, but if you're using the saw to hammer down a nail, you're going to be a fucking idiot, right? You don't want to use that. Bigger cookies to fry? Well, that's not what I'm trying to say, okay?
Behind in a world in which there are no longer is this sense of community. All the other things that you say, everybody else is left, and what you do pick up, you pick up the ones that hear the dog whistle. You pick up the ones that say, yeah, that's the way that I feel, because it's radical. It's like he's willing to say the thing that nobody else will say in this environment, and then you get an enormous amount of niche, but love from that. And I just don't believe that you believe that. I don't believe that you think that it was appropriate for you to say something like that. I don't think you believe that it's appropriate to say women shouldn't vote.
Let's give Nick a second to respond to the first thing.
I know, I talk constantly. That's how I do this.
It's all good.
I apologize.
I get it, and I understand that perspective, and it is offensive, and it is provocative, and that's sort of what makes it funny. I mean, what we would say in our generation is edgelording. We're being edgy. I
don't think anybody cares about making Holocaust jokes or making 9/11 jokes. The problem is that whenever people are doing something and they're saying something very clearly with a serious intent, but it's actually a joke. It's kind of like what people were saying about how, Hassan is framing the 9/12 newspaper. And it's not about that being bad in itself. It's about the other, fucking cornucopia of things that go into the ideology of, wait, maybe he supports this.
Being provocative. And I think that it is that kind of overbearing sense for our entire...
Nick, I'm the king of edgelord.
Well, in a certain way.
Let's let Nick explain.
Yeah, I know. I apologize.
It's that overbearingness that my generation's had our entire lives. That's not appropriate. That's not...
Nick is right about this, too. He's completely right. That a lot of people that are especially his age, not even my age, but his age, are tired of being nickel and dimed and then fucking henpecked by a million Karens telling them what they are allowed and they're not allowed to say. I think that guys in general are exhausted by this. They don't want to be told that their funny joke that they're telling with their friends on Xbox Live between them and everybody's laughing, they don't want to be told that they're not allowed to say that. And I think this is what happened a lot from 2014 to 2023. And to an extent, it still goes on, but it's been minimized.
Funny. Think of the trauma. That's racist. That's white supremacist. That makes it funny. That makes it different, interesting. And let me grant, by the way, I think that now, and this is maybe a concession towards you, now that my kind of humor has become mainstream and popular, I don't even think that that's funny anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
People do the edgelording thing. It's become so commonplace and so tired. I don't think it's that funny or impressive. It's
safe edgy. Yeah, like saying negative things about Israel and Jews is now safe edgy. It's not funny. It's not... The reason why edgy things like that are funny is because they're risky. It's no longer risky.
Part of why I kind of moved past it, because 10 years ago, it was treated like sacrilegious. And there's something funny about the fact that you could say a word or make a joke and make people lose their minds and freak out. And it was like an international incident if you said the wrong thing. And I think that's what made it tempting, especially for a young person. You want to rebel. You want to be defiant. You want to be a little revolutionary or something. True. Now, as time has gone on, I think that's become a fad. Everybody does it. It's lost its power. And I think that, by the way, part of why we're getting less of it is because instead of getting the preachy lecture from the left saying that's not appropriate,
you're getting performative bullshit from right-wing people.
just roll their eyes. Now when an edgy white person says the N-word, people roll their eyes and go, really? You know, that joke again? People hear someone wears a Nazi costume, makes a Holocaust joke. People go, really? That joke again? It's not impressive. It's not funny anymore. We've seen it before. And ironically, that is what makes you get less of it when you disempower those things by not giving them this over-the-top reaction, pretending like it's some great travesty.
I think he's totally right about that too, by the way. I think that the way that you approach, things like that are problematic is that you just simply let people say what they're going to say. If they want to be an asshole, they're going to be an asshole. But the more that you try to demonize it and freak out against it, you're going to immediately have people that are getting super angry and like really mad over it because, now they're being told what they're allowed to say and what they're not allowed to say. I think that's a huge problem. I think that in general, like, people don't like being told what to do and what they're allowed to say, period. It doesn't matter what it is, but the moment they especially, and the group that is the most like this are young men. And I think that's really, that's where this movement is coming from. It's young men. It's over-dramatized, yeah, exactly.
How do you think like October 7th and the subsequent like pro-Palestine movement and the online worlds it created led to a growing audience on the right?
October 7th in particular? Yeah. Well, I think it highlighted and brought to the forefront how captured the right wing is by Israel, which is very unique. I think the Democrats and the Republicans are pro-Israel, but the Republican Party has this inextricable institutional connection with the Israel lobby, with this Likud government in particular. And I think people just started to see the hypocrisies. The hypocrisy was brought to the forefront, which is America first, but not with Israel. No new wars except for with Iran. We're going to be racist and all these things, but
you can't be anti-Semitic.
You dare be anti-Semitic. Don't even, think about it.
Exactly.
So I think that on the right wing, it made it unignorable that there's this ideological institutional capture.
I just feel like a lot of straightforward, like just anti-Semite influencers were taking advantage of the post-October 7th discourse to push other ideas, broader ideas about Jewish people as a whole.
Well, I mean, I think
that's true. I think Andrew's totally right about that. Is that there's tons of people that actually just hate Jews, and they've always hated Jews, and this is their moment to shine, and they're pretending to be pro-Palestine.
It's hard to ignore some of those other conversations. I know that it's now become maybe in vogue to say that the Israel issue is very narrow. It's just Netanyahu. It's just the Likudniks. It's just the Israel lobby. But, what would you say about someone like Larry Ellison? I mean, somebody like that, I don't think fits neatly into this, let's say, problem of Netanyahu.
As far as installing Barry Weiss and whatnot.
Yes.
Gotcha.
Because this is somebody who's not Israeli. He's not even a religious Jew, but he's ethnically Jewish and has this deep affinity for the state of Israel and is using and mobilizing his power and resources and connections to benefit Israel in the private sector.
This is a huge problem, and the only thing that I disagree with Nick on with this is that I think it's not exclusive to Israel. I think that you can see the same type of nepotism and then racial bias that exists with Indians as well. Obviously not all of them, but the amount of accusations of nepotism and ethnic replacement that Indians try to hire other Indians at tech companies, etc. This is overwhelming. Like, you wouldn't have this many reports of this happening if there was not clearly a trend. And Somalians is the same thing. So what the real issue is that, it's fundamentally, this is not, Jewish people do not have a monopoly over tribalism. The reason why their tribalism is, I think, a lot more evident is because it's so high, it's so high influence, right? But I think that this has happened with a lot of other groups of people. And I think that really, I mean, you can look at statistics with this as well, right? Is that other racial groups and ethnic groups have like a very, very high level of, like ethnic preference, right? And own group preference for ethnic issues and degrees. And whereas I would say that in America, generally that's not true. At least not with white people as much. And this is referenced by studies. This isn't something I'm inventing.
And so if you were to say, what's a law that we could pass to prevent that kind of influence, what would it look like? He's an American citizen. He can't buy a media company and hire Barry Weiss to run CBS News. And yet we recognize that's a big problem.
I just feel the conflation of like anti-Zionism and like Holocaust denial played into the hands of the Israeli propaganda apparatus. Because then they can say, hey, look, these people that oppose what we're doing in Palestine also don't think the Holocaust happened.
He's right. Andrew's right.
Big jump in the public perception.
It was almost to me as if that
it's a poison pill.
is your intent to lose any legitimacy about any argument as it relates to Israel and the Likud government, is to say those edgelording things or whatever. I don't know anybody that can hear you after you say that, including myself. It delegitimizes everything, because I don't think that you a little bit of more compassion.
Let's try to stay a little. I don't want to do any character attacks on Nick.
I'm not attacking his character. I'm not attacking. I promise you. I'm
no,
not.
but as far as compassion, I'm more just mean straightforward. Do you feel like the rise in anti-Semitic online influencers post October 7th has given Israel more ammunition to work with in terms of casting everyone who opposes what they're doing as just?
I think the answer is absolutely yes, but I think they would have done it anyway. That's my answer.
It's like a rabid Jew hater.
In some cases, yeah, in some cases, sure. But I also think that's overstated, because I think that, look, let's just be honest. I do believe the political left wants to make the Israel issue very narrow. And they want to say that the issue is this genocide in Palestine. And on some level, they think that the Israeli government is racist. And that's the problem. And
I'm not sure if I agree with Nick on this, especially whenever there's so much open hostility to people like Scott Wiener and that other Josh Shapiro. I actually think that with them, it's a very, very wide issue that does apply to all Jewish people. And I think that tangentially, it also is really evident that that's the case when you look at their support for terrorist groups that seek the extinction of Jewish people. Like, I mean, you don't have the right-wing people that are supporting a, organization, or at least failing to condemn an organization like Hamas that seeks the ethnic extinction of Jewish people. I think that the left-wing people have a much wider net than Israeli. They're the ones that use Israeli as a pejorative. They're the ones that attack people for being from Israel. I think that, and not just being in the military, not just being in there, but just categorically.
I think that ignores that there is a broader conversation, and it does have to do with the Holocaust, and it does have to do with Jews as such, and Jewish nationalism and Jewish identity. So to try to shoehorn it in and say, well, if anybody goes further than this very narrow critique of Israel, well, they're actually helping Israel, I don't agree with that. I think we have to unpack the whole conversation.
Well, do you care a lot about Palestinians?
Not more than I care about anybody else.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's fair. I mean, I think a lot of people can easily say that, for example, the Palestinians that get bombed or whatever is horrible. What they're doing is that I think they're doing something that's very similar to what Americans did to a lot of Arabs post 9/11, is that they wanted people that were Arabs to actively condemn 9/11, and you almost had to explain why it was bad, right? You couldn't just be an American anymore. You had to do this extra level of performance. And I think that that's what's being assigned to every Jewish person now. And I don't think that's right. I don't think a Jewish person has any sort of obligation to make a statement or have an opinion on Israel, because they're Jewish ethnically in the same way that I'm German ethnically or Irish ethnically. I don't have an obligation to have an opinion on, the IRA or about the Nazis, right? For, a historical reason. Was that too much to ask? Yeah, you have to prove basically they're asking. And the difference between what I'm saying here and the pro-Palestine people is that the pro-Palestine people, this is a value, and the value is different than an ethnicity. You choose to have an opinion, you don't choose to have an ethnicity. That's the huge difference between, for example, why it's problematic that pro-Palestine people will not condemn Hamas, and it's also problematic that you expect, Israeli people or Jewish people to condemn Israel. Does that make sense?
People don't want to live around that. People don't want to live around that. In Chicago, it rolled on into the summer, and it wasn't, let's say, the anger of the oppressed and the disenfranchised.
So
they were looting. They were looting and carjacking. The criminals.
Yeah. Who are?
Mostly black.
Oh, man. Oh, boy. Here we go.
Nick. I
Is that not true?
Yeah, maybe, Nick.
Come on, man. Holy shit.
I don't know. I just don't. I don't know why you use the platform that you have to make that your target. Are you saying that the problem with the 26-year-old white kid living in suburbia outside of Chicago and his feeling of being disenfranchised is because there was looting and rioting in Minneapolis by black people? And it's black.
I think it made it worse. Yeah, I definitely think it made it worse. I think if it's your car that gets jacked, I think if it's your car that gets looted, if it's your house that gets broken into, yeah, I would say you're absolutely being affected by this. Like, I don't even know why you would say that.
Black people that are doing it.
Yeah, I mean, the problem with Austin Metcalf was that he got stabbed in the neck at a track meet. And the problem with our city in Chicago is that the Magnificent Mile is gone, Water Tower Place is gone because of all the crime.
Nick, and the type of an entire generation of African Americans is that they've been getting killed by cops for
what? For what?
Decades.
That's
what are
just
you
not
talking
true.
about, Nick?
Because they commit crime. And listen.
He just says it. He just says it. Dude, like, isn't it, like, this is the thing to me that, like, I don't know how a lot of liberals can reconcile this, like Hunter Biden. How is it that in the same way that God stopped performing miracles whenever they invented the camera, we stopped having all of these racist murders by police officers whenever they introduced body cams? Have you guys noticed this? Isn't that a weird coincidence? Wrong, he didn't. Yeah, dumbass like you can still type in my chat. That's a fucking miracle.
Listen,
Shut up.
It's not...
Nick,
What?
That's not true. It's not true. Are you saying that police brutality as it relates and racism in the police force, in the way in which police treat African Americans? Nick, you could grow up here.
I think the reality is that the police are going to go towards something based off of what their prior inclination is. So, like, the police are probably going to use a lighter touch on a woman than they are on a man. And if crime statistics reflect reality, then if they see a person that is of a certain ethnicity, they're like, the way that they're going to approach an Asian woman is going to be a lighter touch than they approach a black man. And we all know this. Every single person knows this.
Like I did, between Wilmington and Philadelphia. And if you were a black dentist and you lived in Wilmington and you commuted to Philadelphia, the chances of you being pulled over by a state trooper, either Delaware or in Pennsylvania, are about 50 times that would be if it was a white guy.
And the problem that Hunter has is that he's also right, but his rightness is, I think, outdated. I think that it's very obvious that we had systemic and systematic racism, and it was cooked directly into our government and everything involved about it. All of these things were totally real and absolutely valid, but it's outdated now. It's outdated, and we have to look at the reality.
50 times. And so what you're trying to tell me is that the problem in America right now is that a 26-year-old white kid who lives in suburban Chicago doesn't feel like he has access because he's been canceled or he's been woke, and the problem is black people.
I didn't say the problem's black.
Yeah, that's not the problem. Like, what? I don't even... How do you even respond to this?
People.
Well, you just did, Nick. You just
said the problem is crime, and we know who's doing the crime in Chicago. The carjack.
Yeah, the problem is crime, and the issue is that this is the problem that liberals have, is that they have this idea that every race is committing crime on an equal level. This is not true. Everybody knows this isn't true. We all know that if you're expecting somebody that did a robbery, you're not expecting it from an Asian woman ever. Has it happened before? Yeah, it's happened. But what are the odds? The reality is that there are demographics that commit crime way more than others. And I think one of the biggest extremes is men and women. Like, we take race out of the equation, it's men and women, and it's also people at a certain age. Whenever you hear of a shooting, you're not going to expect it was somebody that was 85 years old that did it, or 5 years old that did it. These are just realities that we live with. And liberals' constant inability to recognize this and acknowledge it is what I think is getting more black people and more minorities killed, because they're unwilling to acknowledge that some communities have bigger problems with crime, and the reason why is because those communities are committing more crime. They will not reconcile that because it undoes their worldview that everybody is totally culturally and, completely equal. It destroys their narrative. But they have to acquiesce on this for the good, for the best interest of the minorities they're trying to protect. Do you know who the biggest victims of black murder are? Black people. That's the main group of victims. So if you want to keep these people safe, if you want them to be able to have their communities improve, and it's the same with Mexicans, it's the same with anybody else, if you want to have their communities improve, I don't look at these people and say, wow, what a bunch of criminals. I look at these people and I say, wow, these people are being terrorized by criminals. And if you got the criminals out of these communities, you'd see things improve massively. It's the perspective that's wrong. Black people voting Democrat always changes nothing. Yeah, but if you look at the way that the media is set up and everything, it's not that surprising, is it? I also think the hip hop thing is hypnotized black community. I think that they have a lot of cultural issues. I'm not black. I don't really comment a lot on, other groups' cultural issues, but it does seem like very clearly they have cultural problematic issues. I'm just not an expert on this, right? Obviously. You could see that.
Shootings, teen takeovers. We know why there's no...
That's a good example, right? I mean, you look at a teen takeover, 99% of them are black. This is substantial. It's substantial. It's a problem, and it needs to be acknowledged as what it is. Why is that happening? It's clearly not random. 14% of the population, 99%, at least for what I've seen, of teen takeovers. Clearly something needs to happen. New elephants in a room video about exactly this topic? Yeah, exactly. And so that's the issue. The issue is conflating, saying that there's over-policing and there's police problems. The reason why there's more police problems is that there's more police that are having to arrest these people because they're committing more crime. That's the reason why.
Business on the Mag Mile anymore, and it's because they steal cars, they drive them through windows. And
Exactly.
listen, black people are some of the biggest victims of the black crime.
Yes.
We're not allowed to talk about it because of
Fucking exactly.
the
What do you
racial
mean you're not allowed
dimension.
to talk about it? We're talking about it right here. You have a platform.
Yeah, but nobody, dude, what do you mean you're not allowed to talk about it? Hunter Biden is not running for president yet. Nick Fuentes isn't running for president yet, right? You're talking about it in a hotel room. Isn't this, that's the whole point.
In which millions of people listen to you, Nick.
I think
millions.
Well, after Elon had to buy Twitter and open it up, it wasn't
Exactly.
like that before. I was banned from everything.
I think Hunter's totally wrong on this. I think he had some great points on the Holocaust stuff. This, I think he's totally off base.
For many years. So no, you weren't allowed it. You're right. We can talk about it now, but that's only because the good guys
Nick,
won.
you went from
Yeah,
being
true.
banned on Twitter to being on YouTube to creating
I'm
an
not on
entire
YouTube.
show. I know you're not, but now you have Kick, and now you have all of these other things. You have an enormous platform. I want to find common ground of how much of a shithead Donald Trump is. We can get there. We can get there. Okay? What I don't understand is how you didn't recognize that in 2016, and how you didn't.
I think that a lot of people realize that Donald Trump was a piece of shit. I think that if you voted for Donald Trump in 2016 and you thought that he was anything other than a hedonistic piece of shit asshole, you had to be retarded. But it's just the lesser of two evils. You didn't want Hillary Clinton to run the country, and you didn't want to have infinite illegal aliens coming over, and that's it. I mean, you just didn't like Hillary Clinton. Whenever you make a decision, it's not like you have to, there's a lot of things that, I have friends of mine that had family members that were negatively affected because Donald Trump didn't pay them for construction stuff. So, I have, by second degree extension, experience in hearing about this, right? And it negatively affected them. So, and he is an asshole. I think he absolutely is. And I would say that really Trump is like the bull in the china shop that I think we needed in order to usher in a more, I would say, manicured person, somebody like hopefully maybe Marco Rubio. That's how I see it, is that he was a necessary evil.
recognize that in 2020 and how you didn't recognize that in 2024 because Donald Trump
I did
hasn't.
in 24.
Because Donald Trump
Yeah, it's because Kamala sucked more. Like, I don't know why this is so hard to understand.
hasn't changed. Donald Trump hasn't changed at all.
Never.
Donald Trump has been Donald Trump since he
50
came out of
years.
the womb of a woman that was an immigrant to this country. And so
Illegal immigrant to the country that came over and was a net positive taxpayer with her husband, and they created hundreds of jobs. Like this bullshit that you know Hunter Biden is doing. He's the new Biden, right? Or we could just call him Biden now. You know, fucking that he's doing with constantly muddying the good reputation of hardworking, good American immigrants by trying to, you know, dilute their good values with a bunch of illegal aliens that are coming over and committing crime and working under the table, I think is so damaging to average American immigrants. It's almost like it's defaming them. You're dragging their reputation through the mud so you can protect a bunch of criminal illegals.
what I want to know, though, is that
So dishonest.
I don't know how we get past this idea that the biggest problem that you have that with your personal situation and how you extrapolate that to the situation of other white kids that are your age.
I think he's reframing. He's reframing by using hyperbolic terms like the biggest and the main problem is black people. Like that's never been what's discussed. There's like 50 different problems.
That feel disenfranchised, that feel left out, that feel they don't have a shot at the American dream is because of black and brown people, because of Mexicans, because of Venezuelans, because of Haitians, because of... It's always other, Nick, with you. It seems to me.
Well, yeah, when you have a job and then the job gets taken by a Haitian that's on a fucking asylum visa here and they're working 16 hours a day with one break because that's all they've known in Haiti and you're being replaced by somebody like that, you can say, oh, they're working harder than you. Yeah, they are, but we have labor laws to prevent people being exploited. Like, that's the issue, right? Is like we have laws, like they shouldn't have to work that hard. Nobody should have to work that hard. We should have technology work that hard. That's why we have machines that pick cotton now. We have machines that can pick strawberries. Small story, my great-grandfather hated the reputation the Italian-Americans had when he immigrated, much to the point that he refused to teach my grandfather Italian for the fear that he might get the same reputation. So far from what we have now, it's very common for second and third generation Mexican immigrants to refuse to teach their kids Spanish. I wouldn't say it's the norm. I don't think it's the norm, but it's very common.
And I've listened to a lot of the stuff. It's always them. We need to build a wall. Where's the wall, Nick? He never built the wall. Why'd you vote for him?
Well, he built part of the wall, right? And he created, like, this is the type of stuff, like, I don't know. Why would you say this, man? Like, he obviously decreased the amount of border crossings by 99%. The point of the wall wasn't the wall. The point of the wall was to keep illegals from coming into the country. I've always thought the wall is a great metaphor, right? It's a great visualization. But you can climb over a fucking wall. It's about stopping them from coming over. Like, this is such bullshit. Like, you could create a wall with drone surveillance, and by like a group, it creates the same thing.
2020. Why'd you vote for him in 2024?
I didn't vote for him in 2024.
Okay. My point being is that whenever you identify your problem as being something that is other, that you can point to, that's a minority, that is a group of people, that's the Jews.
Are you saying that there are never problems that are other people? Sometimes there are people that are causing problems. Like, I mean, I don't know what do you mean?
I mean, before, remember, all of us, it was the Irish Catholics who were all committing the crime, who weren't allowed into bars, who weren't allowed into, because you know why? Because they were dirty, poor, non-Europeans. They were Irish. Yeah. Every time it's wrong. Every time history has proven that to be wrong in the United States of America. Every time. Inclusion has been our greatest strength. Diversity has been our greatest strength. And I hear you talk about this idea of white culture. What fucking white culture are you talking about, man? What, literally?
What is white culture? This is the type of thing that, like, if you have somebody who is intellectually honest, like Nick, this is the easiest question in the world to answer. This is the easiest thing to... Everybody knows this.
Shakespeare, Dante, Mozart. We're in Philadelphia, the founding fathers.
Yeah.
That's your white culture.
How about the Count of Monte Cristo? Would you consider that part of our white culture?
Sure.
Okay. Well, it was written by a black man in France in the 1700s.
In a milieu of European civilization.
So what?
Because you're picking out one example. It really...
There are examples, and there's a lot of inputs. Like, for example, it's really cool that we were able to play Black Myth Wukong, and that's from Chinese culture. I think that's awesome. There's a lot of examples of that. But that doesn't mean that overwhelmingly this is not European culture.
Just because you got one example.
It really is.
Nick.
Listen.
Nick, I'm not. I really am not.
Hey guys, I think we're reaching what's called a rock in a hard place. Let's talk about it.
Well, let me respond to this, because you're telling me I'm always blaming the other.
No, Nick, for real. Here's the thing.
For real.
Is that the way that you talk and throw out these historical facts, which, by the way, aren't fucking facts. Okay?
Which ones aren't facts?
Well, as it relates to the Civil Rights Movement in 1968, and the reason why we're out in the problem that we're in is because the Civil Rights Act passed in 1964. Dr. Martin Luther King was killed and shot by a white racist, white supremacist in 1968.
Is this something that, like, anybody is supposed to be like, yeah, everybody likes Martin Luther King, basically? There's a street named after Martin Luther King everywhere. There's probably more streets named after Martin Luther King than George Washington. What are we doing? The FBI. And also, do you know who, by the way, if you want to start talking about this, why don't you give Trump a little bit of credit, because he declassified a lot of the shit about MLK.
Balcony of emotion.
Are we going to hear that from Hunter Biden? Probably fucking not.
That's the root of our trouble, because an entire people that have been disenfranchised and enslaved for over 400 years.
We're sick of hearing about that, though. It's 2026.
You may be sick of hearing about it, but you know what? They aren't. And I'll tell you what.
Yeah, and that's their problem. The reality is that Africa has people that are enslaved now. They were enslaved by their own people and sold to Europeans and other people all around the world. Slavery was a universal tradition that Europeans ended, and every single person now that's living in America is better off because of it. This entire idea that there's any kind of guilt for this should be the opposite. We weren't the people that had slavery. We were the people that overcame it. I wonder if Biden would tell us what kind of individual shot Malcolm X? Of course not. I'm black, and I'm sick of hearing about it as well. It personally affected me. I'm done. Yeah, I mean, like, it's just such bullshit.
Get over it. Get over it. It's America.
Get over it. Like, I mean, exactly. Did you know how many injustices there were? All of the redlining and things like that for, like, residential areas. Do you know that was applied to Italians and Mexicans, too? Like, a lot of these types of racism, even Hunter was saying this himself, that, like, this was also applied to Italians. It was applied to Mexicans. It was applied to the Irish. So why is it that, you know, and again, I understand that it's more recent, but at the same time, when are we going to be able to move past this? We've had a black president at this point. We have, in my opinion, I think that we reached total racial parity. And we did that probably in like 15, 20 years ago, if not earlier than that. We still have to hear about how, you know, they're shooting black people left and right. It's ridiculous. And I think the reason why, this is what I think the reason why is that there are a bunch of black identitarian voices out there, people like Al Sharpton, that it is in their best, if racism ever ended, these people would be out of a job. They would be out of a job. So it is in their best interest to make people think that they are still on the razor's edge of Jim Crow. Dr. Umar? Well, even, Dr. Umar, like, I like Dr. Umar a lot more than Al Sharpton. I'll tell you that.
But Nick, you can say stuff like that, okay, without having to say it like that.
Mm-hmm. The Obama effect? Yeah, sure. And they've monetized it, bro. They have. And it's an entire industry now. And I think that's what's really annoying about it, is hearing that, like, this entire thing is so big. Here we go.
I mean, you talk about the anger that's out there and the frustration, and I think part of the frustration, let's be honest, is that white people do feel like we are being boxed out in major cities in the country.
Because you are. Whenever there are incentive programs and things like affirmative action that privilege people that are not white, then you're being boxed out. Because there's a box and they said you're not allowed in the box. Duh.
And it feels like, look, there's a little Haiti and there's various ethnic enclaves where you get that local culture and they do their, cultural festivals and that sort of thing. And white people feel like they're being pushed out and they want a space where things are familiar.
Do you feel the same way about the Italian festival that happens in every city?
Well, here's a good example.
Or St. Patrick's.
Well, great example, Italian festival. What about them trying to fucking replace Columbus Day with Indigenous Peoples Day? Fuck off.
Day?
Well, there's no Irish neighborhood in Chicago. Little Italy.
Sure there is.
I mean, there's some remnant in Bridgeport.
Yeah.
And
It's important to note that
I would even argue that I'm not a big fan of all the little everythings in America. I get that we have Chinatowns. I understand that these things happen naturally. But to view this as something that's positive is, in my opinion, fundamentally un-American. Whenever you become an American, you are no longer Chinese. You're no longer Korean. You're no longer Somalian. You're either an American or you should fucking leave. And I get people that want to stick together, and I understand a certain degree of it, but it's just been romanticized to such a point that it's almost like the amount of segregation is seen like it's some kind of a virtue. I don't like that.
and I'm not trying to get into
It's
a
distasteful.
shouting match here,
It is.
but as a family coming from a family who did leave Philadelphia in the 60s because of black migration from the South after the Civil Rights Act was passed, there was a sort of mass flight of white people into the suburbs, and that kind of led to a homogenization of different cultures because they rushed so fast to build these identical strip mall suburbs that it was very hard to maintain cultural bonds that made different European and white neighborhoods unique around the 1950s and before. So I feel like the mass suburbanization is also a big factor that led to those cultural bonds breaking.
Yeah, but why did that happen? I mean, a lot of the suburbanization is because of the race riots in the 1960s. People moved out because of the
People don't want to deal with it.
violence. My grandfather was in the National Guard in Chicago when, after MLK got assassinated, the whole West Side burned to the ground, and people didn't want to be around that anymore.
Why were the riots?
MLK Jr. was assassinated.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so does that justify burning down the city?
No, I didn't say it justifies it, but it sure justifies an enormous amount of the anger. The same kind of anger that...
Really? Oh, it justifies the anger? Nobody's mad about them being angry. You're mad about them burning down the city. You know when a lot of people were mad? When Charlie Kirk got assassinated. They were mad when somebody tried to kill Donald Trump 3 times. Were there any riots? Did any buildings get burned down? No. It's bullshit. It's not like these people have a unique monopoly on emotional outrage. It's stupid.
You feel about being left out. The same kind of anger that you're expressing right now about the idea that you're culturally irrelevant, that you don't have a place in society. Imagine if you were a 26-year-old black man in 1968 and saw your hero be assassinated.
Oh, I saw Trump get shot in the ear, and
did he?
And I saw Charlie Kirk get shot, and I didn't see any cities get burned down.
I think it's a very, very, very different thing. I think
How's that different? Charlie Kirk got shot in the neck.
Yeah.
And liberals celebrated all over social media by Tyler Robinson.
Yeah.
By a psycho asshole. Who cares who shot him?
Who is what?
Who is some liberal guy.
He is?
Mm-hmm.
But
he's got a transgender boyfriend.
Does that make him liberal? Because
let's be real, bro. Come on. What are we playing these games for? This shit would work on mainstream media, but it's not going to work in a dimly lit hotel room with Andrew and Nick. Everybody knows what you're talking about. Everybody knows the guy's a fucking liberal. He said that he shot him for his political views. It was in the fucking court documents. And this had already been public when this interview, I think, was done. This is so dishonest. Keep this on CNN.
He's transgender because he's gay?
So. Well, because he's got a transgender boyfriend, yeah, I think so.
It makes him liberal.
I think he
What do you think the probability is? What would you bet on?
Was liberal, yeah.
Okay, well, he didn't come from a liberal family. He didn't come from a... liberal enclave. He didn't come from a liberal background. He's not a minority. He was a Mormon, correct? And grew up in a Mormon household, and he went to a largely Mormon college, and he ended up committing an act of violence, according to the FBI and the authorities in Utah that charged him. How does that in any way compare to what we're talking about? I'm not just...
Because there was a systematic, and I wasn't alive when MLK was shot, right? I mean, this might be a surprise to people. I wasn't. But I can tell you this. I don't know, and I certainly don't remember seeing a lot of news stations celebrating or cheering about it like TMZ did. I didn't see that happening. In my opinion, the Charlie Kirk assassination wasn't necessarily... Like, the true evil of the Charlie Kirk assassination was not the fact that he was killed. It was the fact that so many people on the left wing supported his killing. That was the real profound evil of it, and everything else was kind of irrelevant.
Justifying the violence that occurred after the death of Martin Luther King.
Yeah.
But you're saying that that person, this Tyler, whoever his name is was as disenfranchised as the African American community in 1968 in inner cities?
Well,
there were a lot of people, like, I mean, the Japanese were put in internment camps. They were put in internment camps in the 1940s, and they didn't burn down a city. I mean, I think being put in an internment camp is a lot worse than not being able to sit at a diner. It's not even remotely close. They didn't burn down a city after that. This is outrageous. And this was done, like, fucking nationwide. Both of these things are bad, but let's not pretend like putting people in internment camps like this it's insane. That was war? Yeah, but they weren't fucking, like... Can we just acknowledge that putting all of the people... It's like if we put all the Iranians in jail now, it'd be fucking ridiculous.
The question is who we want to live around. And in the 1960s, the West Side burns down. We don't want to live around that. We don't want to live around...
And yes, exactly. And Nick is cutting down to the... I mean, this is, in my opinion, the core of it. It doesn't matter why it's happening. You don't want to live around an area that's a PvP server. You don't want to live around an area where there's gunshots at night. You don't want to raise a family in a place where buildings get burned down. Duh. Or Germans, yeah.
That's not when that happened. That's not when the White Flight happened.
It is. No, it was a big response to it, absolutely.
100% not.
Absolutely.
You make these historical connections that don't exist. Part of it was potentially, but before that, what Mayor Daley did is made Chicago the most segregated city in the entire United States, other than Boston. When you would come from the South to Chicago, African Americans from the South, blacks in the South coming to Chicago would say that Chicago was twice the level of segregation and racism that occurred in the South. And so it wasn't as if you're coming into a situation in which you're feeling in any way enfranchised by the community and the situation that you're in. And as many people left simply because of the idea that someone was black moving into their neighborhood as the...
This is a huge problem, and it was true. My dad said that they blew up the driveway of the first black family that moved into his neighborhood whenever he was growing up. It's true. Like, there are a lot of instances, like, nowadays, I think that whenever people hear things like racism, it's usually because somebody didn't get hired for something and they were, like, vastly unqualified and they're just making it up. But historically, I think that everybody agrees, or at least everybody should agree, that there are a lot of instances of racism. Sure, but we have to stop. I don't know why we have to constantly use... the injustices and evils of 1970 to justify manifesting new injustices in 2026. That's, I think, the big problem that a lot of, I think, white people have, is that many of our, like, fathers, grandfathers, maybe great-grandfathers fought in the Civil War to free the slaves. Many of us probably had family members that might have supported civil rights. It's not like we were in favor of this. It's not like it was never white people against black people to begin with. There were a lot of white people against this too. It's so annoying.
Violence that occurred after the assassination
sin,
of Martin Luther King. So the numbers actually, pre-1968 when King was shot, you had more people leave the city because of the desegregation, because of the 1964 Civil Rights Act, than you did after the riots.
I think that's just not true. I think that the race riots were a huge driver of white flight to the suburbs. I think it's just dishonest to say that's not the case.
Okay.
Obviously, people aren't going to want to live in an area where there's riots. Like, why are we even discussing this?
So what's your point about all of this?
Well, we're talking about where people want to live.
Yeah, I know. So like what in 2026?
Like, what are we doing?
Well, how about in 2020 when Minneapolis burned to the ground? Or how about in the summer of 2020?
I wonder if that increased or lowered property values in Minneapolis whenever everywhere in that city was getting burned down. Not everywhere, but like a lot of places were getting burned down.
In Chicago.
Minneapolis didn't burn to the ground.
It didn't?
No. I mean, there were
BLM
parts
didn't
of it,
destroy
but-
dozens of structures.
They didn't burn down every building. There were some buildings that weren't burned down and destroyed. Oh, I guess it didn't happen.
You guys need a physical witness to what happened in Minneapolis. There were many structures that burned to the ground.
Okay.
Not the city, but
even
there was...
Andrew, and Andrew's a lefty. Even Andrew's being honest about this. It happened.
I would say between 40 to 50 buildings off of Lake Street in the south side.
Holy
that did burn to
fuck,
the ground.
man.
But most of the city was intact, but it was quite an intense situation.
People don't want to live around that.
Yeah.
People don't want to live around that. You know, in Chicago,
Duh.
it rolled on into the summer, and it wasn't, let's say, the anger of the oppressed and the disenfranchised.
So who's
They
at
were
fault?
looting.
So
They were looting and
who's
carjacking.
they?
The criminals,
Yeah. Who are?
mostly black.
We saw this part already.
Nick, I
Is that not true?
yeah, maybe Nick. I don't know.
There's nothing wrong with admitting this. That doesn't mean that you're racist. Doesn't mean you hate black people. This is just the way it is. I'm so sad Hunter's another reality denier. I'm not. I think this is a really good start. Who else would sit down with Nick Fuentes and have conversations that are this honest? Hunter Biden is a person that has almost nothing to lose. That's a good thing. I'm not saying that I would never vote for Hunter Biden, at least not at least in the next 20 years. Who knows what happens after that. But it's not like I'm going to vote for Hunter Biden. But at the same time, like, I recognize that this is progress. This is a good thing. It's a good thing that he's willing to have a conversation like this and people are willing to talk about it. He's intellectually dishonest. He is, but again, when you live your whole life in that world, it might take time for people to get out of it. Is that fair for me to say? I think it's fair.
Straightforward, do you feel like the rise in anti-Semitic online influencers post-October 7th has given Israel more ammunition to work with in terms of casting everyone who opposes what they're doing?
This is the full clip of what we looked at earlier.
In some cases, sure. But I also think that's overstated because I think that, look, let's just be honest. I do believe the political left wants to make the Israel issue very narrow. And they want to say that the issue is this genocide in Palestine. And on some level, they think that the Israeli government is racist. And that's the problem. And I think that ignores that there is a broader conversation. And it does have to do with the Holocaust. And it does have to do with Jews as such and Jewish nationalism and Jewish identity. So to try to shoehorn it in and say, well,
why they would be like, okay, you're just taking advantage of this discourse.
I don't think it's taking advantage. I think that we can sympathize with the Palestinians while also, I don't agree with that. I think we have to unpack the whole conversation.
Well, do you care a lot about Palestinians?
This is the new part.
Not more than I care about anybody else.
So I guess that would be why they would be like, okay, you're just taking advantage of this discourse.
I don't think it's taking advantage. I think that we can sympathize with the Palestinians while also realizing that, look, I'm an American. And so it's a tragedy what's happening in Palestine. But there's
I think it's very weird. I hope he brings up Sudan.
Tragedies happening all over the world. My problem is that Israel has this influence over our government, and we're paying for the
That's exactly it.
genocide, and we're furnishing them with the weapons to commit the genocide. And by the way, America is going to be held liable for this genocide, morally, but also politically and diplomatically and otherwise. But I think that people on the left, they may be guilty of maybe caring more about Palestine than they do about America.
Straightforward.
Fucking exactly. And they have no problem torpedoing local issues because of their foreign conflicts. That is exactly it.
I don't think it's. You believe that it's appropriate to say women shouldn't vote.
Let's give Nick a second to respond to the first thing.
I know I talk
Well-
constantly. That's how I do this.
It's all good.
I don't think it's. You believe that it's appropriate to say women shouldn't vote.
Let's give Nick a second to respond to the first thing.
I know I talk
Well-
constantly. That's how I do this.
It's all good. It's all good.
I apologize.
I get it, and
It's
I
a repeat. You can skip this. Yeah, let me see.
last joke. People go, really? That joke again?
Yeah, we've seen this one. Okay, never mind. Because some of these are overlapped. So just be patient, okay? Okay. Explains to Hunter Biden why they supported and then abandoned Donald Trump.
My question is how did you not see that before? He was a disaster in 2020, a complete and utter disaster as it related to what he did with COVID. Regardless of whether you think we were wearing a mask or not.
The question for Nick is, how did you not realize 6 years ago that Trump would be this sort of letdown?
Because he doesn't hold. There's no ideological core to Donald Trump.
No, I agree with you.
Yeah.
Well,
I think that can be a good thing. People being pragmatic is sometimes more important than them having an ideological center. Sometimes whenever your ideology puts you in a position that you make other people suffer for it, it's a bad thing. I'm not always a big believer in being ideological. It really depends.
you got to realize in 2016 where Republicans were at. We had
Yeah.
John McCain, we had Mitt Romney, and the perception on the right is that they were insufficiently conservative and that they were
Yes.
losers. All they do is lose because they don't fight. There was this perception that the Democrats are ruthless.
There was another big component to this, too. I don't know if Nick is going to talk about this, that the entire Republican campaign and platform was opposing Obama. They basically had Obama derangement syndrome. Like we talk about Trump derangement syndrome or Asmongold derangement syndrome, but they had Obama derangement syndrome. Their focus was not on making the country better. It was not on improving the lives of their voters. It wasn't on making America great. It was about opposing Obama, stopping Obama from doing X, Y, or Z.
Fighters, Obama crushed in 2008, crushed when we thought he really should have lost in 2012. That was a Republican perception that Romney let us down. And so
I could go either way.
when Trump came on the scene in 2016, it was new, it was refreshing.
Yeah,
he
it
seemed
was.
like somebody that was really going to take on not just the Democrats, but also the media.
Exactly. Trump, ironically, filled the same position that Zoran Mandami and the DSA fills in the Democrat Party right now. He represented a huge amount of people that were sick of making their entire identity reactionary, and they wanted to have a goal in order to move forward. They wanted to move forward with something. And I think that generally that's what they did, is that Trump had actual goals. He had values that were like build the wall, put Hillary Clinton in jail, drain the swamp. These were forward-thinking ideas that transcended the context of reflexively attacking Obama. That's, I think, in the same way, that's why the DSA is so strong compared to the Democratic Party, is that even though there's fewer of them, they are all very centered and they have an actual cohesive policy vision. It might be a stupid vision, but as we've seen in history, it doesn't matter whether it's Bolsheviks, whether it's Nazis, or whether it's the DSA. Obviously, not all are equal, but very clearly, a small, very, very concerted group of people that know what they're doing can overtake a larger political party if they have the right messaging and the right motivation. And I think that's what's happened. There is a direction. Now, the direction, in my opinion, is towards third worldism and towards America being a shithole, but they do have a direction. You have to give them credit for that.
On our behalf.
better than the Democrats.
And what's more, you got to think about the mood of the moment in 16
I like
as well,
Romney.
and
I
the
hate
message
Romney.
Trump was giving. Trump said in 16, it's just me and my son and my wife. We don't have any donors. We don't have any special interests. We're going to put America first.
This is a good component because another subtext to this was that Mitt Romney was very much seen as an aloof, out-of-touch businessman. He was a rich, multi-millionaire. He was a Mormon as well. It was hard to relate to somebody like Mitt Romney. Like, yeah, he was rich. And so, like, and this was the way it was. Bain Capital, I think it's been a long time.
Make the country great again. This is a very appealing message, and I talk all the time on my show about it, and realizing now that it was obviously a scam and now obviously unfulfilled completely. And you're right, Trump is non-ideological. The message was brilliant because
he shouldn't be ideological. I don't think that you can be a leader and make, coherent decisions if you are completely ideological. Sometimes you have to compromise your values and your principles in order to achieve a greater goal.
It said, one, the system is broken. Yes. America's not great anymore, but it used to be. We can make it great again, but in order to do it, we need to actually bypass the system.
Yes.
Why is it that we never have victories? Why is it that things don't change? Because of money. He said, and that's why I'm different. I'm rich. I'm a billionaire. If I self-fund my campaign and don't take super PAC money, then I won't have to listen to the lobbyists and the special interests.
This is what separated him from the previous Republicans like Mitt Romney.
I could fire the people I need to fire, do the things I need to do. That was like a very powerful message in 2016. And after 4 years, I was one of the people even back then that said, look, it never materialized. He did wind up taking super PAC money. He took AIPAC money for that matter. Sheldon Adelson money at that time in 16. Even in the first term, bombed Iran. In the first term, didn't build the wall. In the first term, didn't even reduce illegal immigration until 2019. And I remember the timeline perfectly because I covered it every day. It was like in May and June 2019, 20-year illegal immigration high in terms of month over month. But why did I go for him in 2020?
Because it was better than the alternative. I think that's really what happened, right? Is that at a certain point, a lot of people might not have liked Kamala Harris, but one of the biggest criticisms that I think a lot of liberals have towards leftists, which I think is extremely valid, is that those people effectively gave rise to Trump. And if you look at it from a liberal's point of view, and you see it from their eyes, I think that they're stupid and wrong, but if you see it from their eyes, they allowed ICE to take over. They allowed ICE to disappear families. They allowed Trump to bomb the Middle East and start another war. And they did all of this over a few fringe social issues. Things like Gaza, Palestine, it's the same thing basically, but it's the same, the trans issues, etc. So we have a part of a wall. Yeah, well, here's my point, right, is that you have these people that, yes, very clearly, they also torpedoed it. But you have to pick the lesser of two evils sometimes. And I think that that's fair.
Height of the pandemic, we all thought on the right that if anyone other than Trump was president, you were going to get a vaccine mandate, which we really didn't want to be forced to take the vaccine. We thought the lockdown might never end. We thought that censorship would kick into overdrive.
It did.
And so we said, really, it's unacceptable that anyone other than Trump would just be a disaster. And then obviously Biden came in, and I don't think it was as bad as we thought it would be, to tell you the truth, honestly. But by 2024, I was out. In 2024, because everything you're saying is totally true. And I was telling people on my side, I was saying he's not going to build the wall. And I know you're against that. He's not going to do the mass deportations.
I don't think that that's fair. I think that it's I do think that Trump hasn't done as much as he could have done, but I do think that Trump should be given credit for basically shutting down the border. I think it's fair to say that Trump pretty much shut down the border, and he stopped the massive inflow of illegal aliens, and also we've had net negative, immigration. So it's not an uppercase W, but he gave us a lowercase w. And he solved the big problem that we had, and he at least stopped the bleeding. We haven't treated the disease yet, but you've stopped the bleeding. And you've begun to treat the disease, which is through some mass deportations. It's not as extreme as it should be, though. So much coping? Is this coping? I feel like this is just a factual reality. Trump did shut down a huge amount of the border crossings in the southern border, and he did it extremely quickly. I'm not I complain about Trump all the time, but I view Trump as a lesser of two evils. Like us, not having migrant caravans coming over all the time is a good thing, and it should be acknowledged as that. If Kamala Harris was the president right now, you would still have the country being overrun. I had to clean off my desk. It looked dirty. You would still have the country being overrun by infinity South Americans. I don't want to have that happen. And Trump shut that down. Good. That's great. It's good that one thing that's good that happened.
That he's not going to start no new wars. I said in 24 he's going to take us to war in Iran, and the Ukraine war, I said that's not going to end in one day.
Everybody knew
too
that.
complicated. We're already in it.
Trump should have never said that.
So I didn't vote. I didn't vote in 2024, and I told my followers not to vote for Trump for that reason. And it was only until a year later, after all the exuberance died down and people saw the bearing of the Epstein files, the war.
That was the beginning of the end. I think that the Epstein files was the point where it was really, really politically difficult and socially difficult to justify supporting Donald Trump when it seemed like he was trying to hide the Epstein files. And it broke the trust of, I think, a lot of the online people that have seen that there is a very clear one-party system that is taking advantage of not just kids, but everybody. And Trump did, like, the way that he tried to hide it, too, was just so... It was almost like you tried to make it look as bad as possible. The downplays and delays were bad. Yeah, if he had come out and he had said, yep, it's taking longer, sorry about that, we have to make sure we redact everybody, and we're going to be doing this, I know you want to have this, I actually think that Trump's position right now would be astronomically better. Because the problem, like, I think that even if you're a huge Trump fan, you can acknowledge that wouldn't it just be a lot more convenient if people couldn't say Trump was in the Epstein files? If Trump never knew Jeffrey Epstein, wouldn't that just be better for us? Wouldn't that just be better? Wouldn't that just be easier, right? I'm sorry, that's bullshit. It's not bullshit. It's not at all. Like, it's inconvenient that Trump was very good friends with Jeffrey Epstein for many years. It makes him look bad. Same with Bill Clinton.
Or in Iran, people said, you know what, you were right. You were right about Trump. Even Alex Jones told me, you were right about Trump. I was all in on him. So, I mean, as far as him being vaporware is concerned and a scammer, and fundamentally you're 100% right, no ideological core.
Yeah, everybody knows that. It's not about that. It's about the lesser of two evils. Let me see. Oh, yeah, this is it. So overall, like, I've seen a couple of other clips, but I think that this is the main meat of it. I really like this interview. I think this is one of the best interviews, if not the best interview Andrew has ever done. I think Andrew's in a very unique position that he's definitely, I think he's positioned himself way too far to the left, and it's been problematic. And I think that he lost a lot of credibility with how he handled the Nick Shirley interview. But I still think that he can recover it if he starts making more content like this. I think this is a great apology for that. Because he can activate people that are right-wing and left-wing, bring them together, make unique content, and that's the way I feel about it. It's good. It's great content. It is. It's a great start to recovery. Yeah, definitely, right? I mean, as I said before, like, that's why I didn't want to go all out on Andrew. You know, I wasn't out totally on him with, like, the Nick Shirley stuff. Like, I criticized him. I thought he was wrong, but I still like him. I still like his content. And it's because I was hoping they'd do stuff like this, and I think this is a great example of it, right? One of the better interviews in politics overall. I wish that in order to do a political interview, it had to be more than 2 hours. This might sound crazy, but I wish that you had much longer political interviews, so that way you could really dig into people's opinions rather than just simply looking at it from, like, a one-dimensional perspective. There's one more. Oh, this is him talking about it. You don't see them saying at the end they understand each other better now and they can work together? Most people that care about America can work together. And this is one of the things that the problem with Democrats is that I think they turn a blind eye to their extremism and they give rise to extremism. Most Democrats don't think that 6-year-olds can become trans, but they're too afraid to say that. This is obvious, and it's obvious in polling, by the way. It's just a reality. There's like, it was like 78 or 87% of people, you know, toned down their actual views about gender identity in order to appear more publicly acceptable. And so it's all a mirage. It is. And people like Hunter Biden, at the end of the day, I would rather have somebody like Hunter Biden than one of these DSA foreigners that doesn't even barely speak English well. And like, Hunter Biden is a crackhead. He is a whoremonger. He is a criminal. But he's an American. I don't want to have some random fuck from another part of the world come over to the country, especially not the West, right? I'm not thinking about Norway or England. I'm thinking about non-Western countries. I don't want these fucks coming over to our country trying to tell us how to run our country by turning it into the same shitholes that their parents or grandparents fled from because of the consequences of their values. He might be a crackhead, but he's our crackhead. That's it. And I'm not even trying to endorse Hunter Biden. But if I had to choose between the lesser of two evils, I can easily do that. You see what I'm saying?
Honestly, I liked Hunter Biden. We talked a little bit before the interview. We talked a little bit afterward. And he was nothing other than respectful and courteous.
Yeah.
And friendly. And very sincere, very earnest. There was no
By the way, this is the way politics used to be. If you watch debates from John McCain and Barack Obama, or in 2012 with Mitt Romney and Obama, this is the way it was. It's usually this way. And you saw a little bit of normalcy when you had the vice president debate between Tim Walz and J.D. Vance. Tim Walz is a crazy, traitorous piece of shit retard, but there was a decorum there and a respect that I think that a lot of Americans have been missing.
Tense, no bullshit. I really genuinely liked him. And obviously there were parts in the conversation where we disagreed. He's from the left, I'm from the right. But I did think it was a really nice discussion because it was civil. We were open about our disagreements.
Exactly.
And I think there was a willingness on both parts to actually listen.
Yes.
We're probably not.
That's the main issue nowadays, is people will not even listen to what you're saying. They will just assign some sort of pejorative to it, and then they will just ignore it. I think this happens with everything. Tim did say he's a knucklehead. You see what I'm saying, though, right? Do you think Hunter's too deep in the shit, his dad being Joe and all, to ever change his views and leftist policies and fulfill his chud destiny? No, I think Hunter Biden could easily be president one day. I think it's extremely possible. Like, the probability of that happening is, I think, higher than the probability of, AOC becoming president.
I'm going to 100% come to the other side. I'm not going to come to the left. He's not going to come to the right.
Yeah.
But I do think that we both heard each other. We both saw each other. We both listened. And I thought that was nice for a change. So I enjoyed it immensely. I thought it was a great conversation. I was very pleased with how it went.
Do you think Democrats would vote for him?
He's really funny.
I think Democrats would easily vote for Hunter Biden. Why would the Democrats vote for Hunter Biden? Because voting for Hunter Biden would be better than, voting for whatever the Republican is. They will always end up voting on that person. Not the media attacking him for almost being racist. Well, the media is really bad. I mean, I think everybody knows the media is really bad. Sure. I mean, definitely. Not the Hassan Democrats. Yeah, but the Hassan Democrats didn't vote for Kamala Harris either. Like, those people are a separate identity group that is not even American. This is like a foreign influence that should not even be in the country. So I don't really care a lot about, oh, wow, well, this, far left influence group, like, these people need to be either deported, investigated, put in jail, have their assets and fucking bank accounts frozen and seized. Like, they are fucking terrorist supporters. They constantly support America's enemies. They want to destroy America. Like, I don't know what we're doing here. What are we doing? Most Democrats don't know who Hassan is. I'm not saying that Hassan is not the only person with that. I'm just saying that identity group and that ideological group, right? So it's just ridiculous.